Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds is a story about people playing card games on motorcycles, but if we look past how the plot moves along, we can see that it's also a story about loss. Yusei, Jack, and Crow all lose their families to a catastrophic event, living on the streets of Satellite thereafter, struggling every day under the pressures of poverty. Luna and Leo, despite being well-off residents of the wealthy upper crust of Tops, are subject to long stints of loneliness, as their parents work day in and day out to support their lavish lifestyles. While they may live comfortably, they've certainly lost out on many years of connecting with their parents. And then, there's Akiza Azinski, born with the ability to manifest the power of duel monsters but not the support needed to control it. She was ostracized from school, her community, and some might even say her own family. A dangerous witch, best left to her own devices, lest she cast a powerful curse on you. Our other protagonists have lost much, but the one thing they did have was each other. Akiza had nobody. But even the depths of this mystical persona weren't enough to keep her safe, as there were always those that sought to use her own powers to their ends, directing her pain at whatever target they saw fit. It was only after Yusei's repeated attempts to reach out, and a reconciliation with her family, that Akiza was fully able to shed the Black Rose persona, dueling now not to cause pain, but to prevent it. So today, we pay tribute to the duelist who's seen the worst and best of humanity, who embraced the path of the witch, embodying the aspects of care and healing for her community, but would nonetheless level her rage at anyone who sought to do them harm. Walk with me through the Black Garden as we cover monsters both botanical and brutal. It's time for Akiza Explained. Today's episode is brought to you by my lovely patrons and the fine people over at Dragon Shield. If you want to protect your cards with the strongest scales on the market that even come with their own lore while supporting the channel, use my affiliate link in the description. Let's start by taking a stroll through all of Akiza's main deck monsters from the anime. It's mostly plants, but don't be surprised if you see a few lawn ornaments scattered about. First up is a favorite of Synchro and Xyz players alike, Copy Plant, a level 1 wind plant tuner monster with 0 attack and defense. Once per turn, you can target one other plant monster on the field that has a level, and for the rest of this turn, this card's level becomes that targeted monster's current level. Now, at the time, this was meant to help you make even-leveled Synchro monsters. Copy a 2, and you can go into a 4, copy a 4, and that gets you an 8, things like that. Though, you could just skip out on the effect, so you can go into a Synchro 1 level higher. But Copy Plant would take on an extra role during the Xyz era because, as it turns out, mimicking the level of another monster is a great way to access an extra deck type that needs monsters of the same level. Just goes to show that mimicry is the sincerest form of extra deck enabling. Evil Thorn is a level 1 dark plant monster with 100 attack and 300 defense, and you contribute this card to burn your opponent for 300 damage. And if you do, special summon up to 2 Evil Thorns from your deck in attack position, but their effects can't be activated. This is another card that's gained more utility beyond the series it was introduced in. True, you get to burn your opponent for a little damage and get an extra level for Synchro summoning, but this became a niche card when rank 1 Xyz monsters became important as a 1-card enabler. But it really came into its own when Link monsters hit the scene, especially ones that valued plant monster material, as this is a 1-card Aromatherapy Jasmine or Sylvan Dance Peony. And whenever you see someone win a game in time because of the burn damage, you'll understand why this card is so evil. Glow Up Bulb is a level 1 Earth Plant Tuner monster with 100 attack and defense, and if this card is in your grave, you can send the top card of your deck to the grave, and if you do, special summon this card. But you can only use this effect once per duel. Talk about foresight. The designers knew this was going to be a problem, but even that restriction didn't do anything to curb its usage. As it turns out, a monster that can reborn itself basically for free is good in a variety of situations. You can summon it normally to use it as Synchro material, then reborn it to Synchro Climb, discard it as cost for something else, then bring this back for free, then use it as Synchro material at that point, or you can even tribute it away for a Monarch. Really, the list goes on. And sometimes you'd be lucky enough to mill a card off the top of your deck that actually advanced your game plan. So it's little wonder why this card is just banned, and for the life of me, I can't think of a single time in the future in which this card would be considered healthy. I think its retrain is all the glow up it needs. Ruddy Rose Witch is a level 1 light plant tuner monster with 800 attack and 1700 defense. You can tribute this card to add a Witch of the Black Rose from your deck to your hand, and if you do, take a level 3 or lower plant monster from your deck and place it on top of your deck. Then immediately after this effect resolves, you can normal summon one Witch of the Black Rose from your hand. You can also banish this card from your grave to return one of your Black Rose Dragons or Ruddy Rose Dragons that are banished or in your grave to the extra deck. This helps you play fewer copies of your Synchro Rose Dragons, but the important aspect is that this card was made as support for another Legacy Akiza card, Witch of the Black Rose. It's a level 4 Dark Spellcaster tuner monster with 1700 attack and 1200 defense that can't be special summoned. If this card is normal summoned and you control no other monsters, you draw a card and show it, and if it's not a monster card, send it to the grave. Also destroy this card. In the past, you had to pray you had the right monster on the top of your deck, but even that wasn't always enough because you just draw the card, you don't even summon it. But because Ruddy Rose Witch can set up the top card of your deck, the ideal card would be Rose Fairy, a level 3 wind plant monster with 600 attack and 1200 defense, and if this card is added from your deck to your hand by a card effect, you can special summon this card. By tipping Rose Fairy off the top with Black Rose, you now have the ability to access level 7 Synchros, which is, pretty relevant for us. So the witch might have started out in a bad place, but certainly rose to the occasion, in more ways than one. Dark Verger is a level 2 earth plant monster with 0 attack and 1000 defense, and when a plant tuner monster is normal summoned to your field, you can special summon this card from your grave in attack position. Hey look, free non-tuner material to go with our tuners! And bonus, this isn't once per turn, so if you have multiple copies in your grave, you can summon them all on the same chain, so the more you got in your grave, the better. Heck, the more extra normal summons you get, the better. I'm looking at you, Oromage Jasmine. But you're really gonna make this an earth attribute after calling it Dark Verger, huh? Phoenician Seed is a level 2 fire plant monster with 800 attack and 0 defense, and you can send this face-up card to the grave to special summon a Phoenician Cluster Amaryllis from your hand. And what's that monster? Well, it's a level 8 fire plant monster with 2200 attack and 0 defense that can't be special summoned except by its own effect and Phoenician Seed's effect. If this card attacks, it's destroyed after damage calculation, and if this card is destroyed and sent to the grave, you burn your opponent for 800 damage. And during your end phase, you can remove from play a plant monster from your grave to special summon this card from your grave in defense position. Hey look, another banned card! And why is that? It doesn't look like anything special, right? Seems like a lot of hoops to jump through for a little burn damage every once in a while, right? Oh, you have no idea. Prepare for a little trivia. See, when Topologic Bomber Dragon was made, a Link monster with a mandatory main monster zone board wipe when a monster is special summoned to any of its zones, it didn't take people long to figure out that this was the key piece for an FTK. As long as you had 9 other plants in grave, you don't need a 10th one because at that point you've already burned for game, you could summon this enough times to take your opponent's life points from 8k to 0 all in one end phase. This is possible because Cluster isn't a once per turn effect, and it activates during your end phase, not at the start of your end phase. So once it gets destroyed, your opponent gets burned for 800. Remember that its self-destruct effect is separate from the one that burns your opponent when it's destroyed for some ungodly reason. Then, because you're in your end phase, you summon back the Cluster to a zone Bomber Dragon points to, wipes out all monsters in the main monster zones, including itself, proccing the burn effect, which will then proc the revival effect, and you do it over and over again. Talk about a total clusterfuck. Wall of Ivy is a level 2 earth plant flip monster with 300 attack and 1200 defense, and its flip effect special summons an Ivy token in defense position to your opponent's side of the field, which is a level 1 earth plant monster with 0 attack and defense. And when this token is destroyed, its controller takes 300 damage. This is part of an odd sub-theme of Akiza's builds, where it punishes your opponent for having plant monsters. And while that was pretty weird back in the day, it's now gotten some strange utility as a way to shut off your opponent's ability to drop infinite impermanence or evenly matched right out of their hand, which is kinda cool. But as a flip monster, it's way too slow to be used as an effective deterrent. Also, I'm gonna split some hairs here for a bit. I don't know anyone that would classify this thing as a wall. It barely qualifies as a decorative lawn ornament. Hedgeguard is a level 3 earth plant monster with 0 attack and 2100 defense, and during damage calculation during either player's turn, when a monster you control attacks or is attacked, you can send this card from your hand to the grave to have the attack of that monster you control until the end of this turn, and that monster can't be destroyed by this battle. This effectively makes for a very limited hand trap version of Waboku. It's not a very strong option. For some reason it halves your attack for the whole turn but only saves you for one attack, though its own defense stat is is pretty big, and I do remember using this as a budget way to get attacks through while playing gladiator beasts as a bit of a way to hedge my bets against bigger monsters. Twilight Rose Knight is a level 3 Dark Warrior tuner monster with 1000 attack and defense, and monsters your opponent controls can't target plant monsters for attacks. And when this card is normal summoned, you can special summon a level 4 or lower plant monster from your hand. While not quite as powerful as being able to summon from the grave, the ability to immediately pair it with another non-tuner material off a single normal summon was pretty nifty back in the day. It also started the trend of warrior monsters synergizing really well with our other cards, giving us room to flex some warrior support to help smooth things out. It's not very good now, but I'm honestly kinda surprised we haven't gotten a modern retrain of this. Dawn Rose Knight feels like it's such an easy follow-through. Lord Poison is a level 4 water plant monster with 1500 attack and 1000 defense, and if this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the grave, you target a plant monster in your grave except a copy of this card and special summon that target. While this card sees minor play in Yami Merrick's deck, it's seen a lot more with Akiza, and it's obviously much more geared towards her playstyle, so we're keeping it in. When being destroyed by battle was prevalent, this was actually a pretty huge deal, because its revival effect didn't have a summon cap. You could bring this out as a blocker to punish your opponent, or just crash it into a bigger monster to immediately get monsters like Gigaplant and Camellia. But now that you can pick this off with various kinds of removal, this doesn't see any play outside of niche alternate formats. I'm telling you, that destroyed by battle condition really poisons the well on this. Revival Rose is a level 4 dark plant monster with 1300 attack and defense, and if a level 5 or higher plant monster you control is destroyed, you can special summon this card from your grave, essentially giving you extra blockers. Heck, if it survives a turn, it's a non-tuner or tribute material to reinvest in other monsters. This might have been a good piece of revivable material that you can keep getting back in Rika since they have gigantic monsters, but since we tend to fold our monsters into Xyz and Lynx, which don't have levels, we're gonna need another theme this can fit into before it becomes a viable tech. I just guess you'll have to keep an eye on it. Violet Witch is a level 4 Dark Spellcaster monster with 1100 attack and 1200 defense, and if this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the grave, you add a plant monster with 1500 or less defense from your deck to your hand. This bears an uncanny resemblance to Witch of the Black Forest, a card name I'm sure I've already said by accident while trying to cover Witch of the Black Rose. I actually think I got that one right. I'm kind of proud of myself. It has the same type, level, attribute, and battle stats, and the effect reads as a nerfed version of the original. Well, rather a different nerf, if you will. Black Forest can grab any monster with 1500 or less defense from your deck when sent from the field to the grave in any way, but Violet only gets plants and only when destroyed by battle. Though nowadays you can actually use what you search off of Violet immediately, as opposed to the new errata on Forest. But even then, I'd take Forest any day of the week, as the destroyed by battle clause is, once again, a huge hindrance. Though, now all I want is a cycle of differently colored witch monsters that search different monster types. Konami, you know what to do. Gigaplant is a level 6 Earth Plant Gemini monster with 2400 attack and 1200 defense, following all the usual Gemini rules. Once its effect is active, once per turn, you can special summon an insect or plant monster from your hand or grave. Now, this card has been around since before 5Ds, but Akiza does have it in a flashback, so I'm gonna count it. Especially because I get to talk about one of the best Gemini monsters ever printed. Like how Ill Blood was for zombies, Gigaplant was a phenomenal advantage engine in plants, especially with access to Lonefire Blossom, which could in turn become any plant out of your deck. All you needed was the extra normal summon to get this online, and with the release of the equip spell Supervise, lists adopted it almost immediately, taking on the name Gigavise. And while that's long since fallen out of favor in exchange for quicker, cheaper, and more powerful effects, this card has left a huge impact on the game's early years. You could say it's a Giga impact. Rose Tentacles is a level 6 Earth Plant monster with 2200 attack and 1200 defense that can't be special summoned. At the start of the battle phase, for each plant monster your opponent currently controls, this card gains 1 additional attack during each battle phase this turn. And each time this card destroys a plant monster by battle, burn your opponent for 300 damage. This brings us back to that anti-plant game plan we saw in Wall of Ivy. It's effectively a prototype version of one of those attack as many monsters as possible effects, but with a plant twist. And because of that, we can actually cause some big damage. See, the extra attacks are provided at the beginning of the battle phase, but once we have them, if you have any form of quick effect removal that gets those monsters off the board, then you have a bunch of direct attacks. Well, that's the dream scenario at least. The combination of your opponent needing to be on Sun Avalon Rika and only being able to be normal summoned really messes with any chance of this card being playable, even back in the day. It's safe to say that I've seen enough bad cards to see where this is going. Alright, that does it for the anime. Now we have Akiza's roster of main deck monsters from the manga. First up is Rose Lover, a level 1 earth plant monster with 800 attack and defense, and you can banish this card from your grave to special summon a plant monster from your hand, and if you do, it's unaffected by your opponent's trap effects this turn. So not only does it act as an extender, it also gives them some protection that, at the time, was probably meant to keep them safe from cards like Torrential Tribute or Bottomless Trap Hole, but nowadays also keeps them safe from infinite impermanence, and potentially any counter traps your opponent might have on hand. And let's not forget that, with the latest resurgence of trap tricks, this is pretty useful in the matchup too. In fact, if anyone doesn't love this card, it's them. Rose Archer is a level 3 Earth Warrior monster with 1000 attack and defense, and during either player's turn when your opponent activates a trap card while you control a plant monster, you can send this card from your hand to the grave and negate the activation, and if you do, destroy it. Akiza must have had a bad run-in with Labyrinth, because the anti-trap card sentiment here is palpable. While it might seem like this is double dipping with Rose Lover, it actually fills its own particular niche. While Rose Lover keeps an individual monster safe, Archer can stop massive threats like Evenly Matched, or floodgates like Skill Drain. And while it not being a plant monster is a bit problematic, its warrior typing does mean you can run this with Rhoda for an extra copy, as well as playing Warrior Returning Alive to recycle this. Also, big props for me for keeping with the aesthetic. Their bow is made out of rose stems, and as I've been told, every rose has its thorns, and they have to contend with those every time they use it. Remember folks, nothing is more important than committing to the bit. Rose Princess is a level 3 earth plant monster with 1200 attack and 800 defense, and if only your opponent controls a monster, you can special summon this card from your hand, and if summoned this way, it counts as a tuner. You can also discard this card to add a White Rose Cloister from your deck to your hand, a field spell that we'll get into later. For now, I'd like to appreciate that it's a free special summon from hand. It's also got the interesting quirk of being a tuner when summoned this way, but acts as a non-tuner any other time it's brought to the field, giving you some flexibility in your lines of play. I would also like to point out that this makes for incredible Xyz material for Melee of the Trees. I know I said I got rid of this bit, but old habits die hard, what can I say? Rose Paladin is a level 4 Earth Warrior monster with 1800 attack and 200 defense, and when this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle and sends it to the grave, you contribute this card to special summon a plant monster from your hand or deck in defense position. You can also send this card from your hand to the grave to add a level 7 or higher plant monster from your deck to your hand. You can have Paladin take it out to swap them into a different monster, or you can just pitch it to get your hands on a big plant, something I did more than a few times in Sylvan's to grab Sage Koya. We also almost had some real good synergy with the Ivy tokens we give to our opponent via Wall of Ivy, but sadly Paladin stipulates that you have to send the monster to the grave, which is just unfortunate. Guess the anime and manga cards don't always play nice together just cause they're used by the same person, huh? Rose Shaman is a level 4 Earth Warrior monster with 1700 attack and 200 defense, and you contribute this card to draw a card. You can also banish this card from your grave, then target a plant monster in your grave and add it to your hand. Then if you added a plant monster whose original level is 7 or higher, you can send a plant monster from your deck to the grave. But you can only use one effect per turn and only once per turn. So no summoning this card, tributing for the draw, getting a plant back, then foolishing all in the same turn. You've gotta pace yourself. I could see this being used in decks like Rika to get back copies of Hellebore or Snowdrop while setting up copies of Petal and Princess, and of course, who doesn't like a good draw? Like, we can forget about the Rose designation. I wouldn't be surprised if we found this as the secret tech pick for Therians, acting as a way to recycle Lily Borea while also being a warrior in grave to summon any copies of Bull's Eye. Or, you know, it's just outrageous theory crafting. It's hard to tell with me sometimes. Rose Witch is a level 4 earth plant monster with 1600 attack and 1000 defense, and can be used as 2 tributes for the tribute summon of a plant monster. This isn't entirely terrible if there was a context where you needed a tribute summoned plant monster specifically, but no such card exists. We do have monsters like the cycle of level 8 flower princesses, which is probably the most applicable situation, but Lonefire Blossom makes summoning almost any plant a breeze, so it's gonna need one heck of a trick up its sleeves to be playable. Fallen Angel of Roses is a level 7 earth plant monster with 2400 attack and 1300 defense, and you can special summon this card from your hand by returning a plant monster you control to the hand except a copy of this card, but banish it when it leaves the field. This position's Fallen Angel is a great piece of rank 7 support as it won't be banished when it gets detached, letting you either revive it later or put it back in your hand with Rose Shaman. But if you don't mind that, it also makes for incredible synchro material, pairing well with level 1 and 3 tuners to make the game's variety of excellent level 8 and 10 synchros. And it has the side benefit of recycling any on-summon effect of your plants. While it might have fallen, it's always ready to raise up its team. Queen Angel of Roses is a level 7 Earth Plant monster with 2400 attack and 1300 defense, and you can tribute summon this card in face-up attack position with a single plant monster as tribute. Once per turn during your standby phase, destroy a face-up monster on the field that has the lowest attack, your choice if tied. This is a bit more aggressive than Fallen Angel, but it doesn't come without its shortfalls. See, it doesn't care which side of the field has the weakest monster, so if your opponent doesn't play anything, or if they have the biggest monster on the field, it's gonna backfire on you really quickly. Heck, the fact that you have to wait until your standby phase is already pretty rough, so you should aim to special summon this near the end of your opponent's turn just to be safe. Kinda bites that we have to handle this with so much care though, you'd think a queen would be better at taking charge. Rosaria, the Stately Fallen Angel, is a level 8 Earth Plant monster with 2900 attack and 2400 defense, and must first be special summoned from your hand by banishing 2 level 7 or higher plant monsters, one from your hand and one from your grave. Once per turn, you can negate the effects of all other face-up cards currently on the field until the end of this turn. Wow, that's actually pretty good. That's a 2022 effect at least. Shame about that summon requirement though, but it's only a matter of time before we get a theme that can support plants and banishing, and I can't wait, because being a whole board wipe negation is kinda wild. It's also another one of those effects that isn't just limited to monsters, so annoying field spells and face-up back row are just things you can ignore. I know plants have had it good these past few years with some nice archetypes, but here's hoping they get even better, cause the state of plants isn't quite there yet. Okay, yeah, the next monster we have doesn't really fit into any of the categories I have, so randomly, here's Dark Rose Fairy, a level 2 Dark Fairy monster with 800 attack and 1000 defense. And if any number of tuner monsters are special summoned except during the damage step, you can special summon this card from your hand. If this card is in your grave, you can send a card from your hand or field to the grave to place this card on top of or on the bottom of your deck. These effects are, I believe, meant to be more ways to enable Witch of the Black Rose, because once you set this on the top of your deck, Witch's effect is guaranteed to go off, at which point the next time you special summon a tuner, you can drop Dark Rose Fairy out of your hand to give you some extra levels to work with. But I'll be honest, I feel like Ruddy Rose Witch already does a pretty good job of this, and it's also a plant. Heck, at least the warrior monsters have some broader synergy we can take advantage of. Why in the world is this a fairy? Yeah, I know it's in the name, but if we start going by that logic, we're gonna end up having a lot more dragon monsters around. We've got a few more monsters to cover, but to keep the iconic rose dragons for later, let's take a detour through the spells and traps. Fragrant Storm is a normal spell card that has you targeting a plant-type monster on the field. You destroy that target, and if you do, draw a card. Then if that card is a plant monster, you can reveal it to draw one more card. This has got to be the strangest archetypal draw 2 in existence. You pop a plant, replace the destroyed monster, and if you drew a plant, you get to replace the spell. However, the trick isn't to pop your own monsters, it's to destroy your opponent's plant monsters. But unless you're in a strange mirror match, you're gonna need to lean into the anti-plant sub-theme we've got going on. If we give our opponent an Ivy token, then we go even regardless. But if we use DNA Surgery, or another card we'll talk about in a bit, we won't be burdened with having to play Wall of Ivy, just some other weird cards. But in this context, where we get to pick from our opponent's monsters willy-nilly, it's actually pretty rad. It's free spot removal that has the potential to draw you an extra card, and I've gotta say, I love the smell of value in the morning. Magic Planter is a normal spell card that sends a face-up continuous trap card you control to the grave to draw 2. Despite its usage by Akiza, this card has actually seen the heights of its power when paired with really gummy control decks. Using this as a way to rid themselves of a floodgate that's either not helping or hindering their own game plan, trading it in for 2 more draws, or in the case of Volcanics, sending a Blaze Accelerator reload to plus into the sun. I think it's safe to say that whenever this card sees play, it's never for something fair. But what really gets me is the implication that you can use Yu-Gi-Oh cards to grow things. I know they're made of fancy paper, but the process of making them fancy can't be good for composting. If I have any composters in chat, please let me know. Rose Bell of Revelation is a normal spell card that adds a plant monster with 2400 or more attack from your deck to your hand, and you can banish this card from your grave to special summon a plant monster with 2400 or more attack from your hand, but you can only use one of this card's effects per turn and only once per turn. So sadly, this isn't just an emergency teleport for Titania, Princess of Camellias. Still, having another free way to summon big monsters out of your hand is pretty nifty, and I'm sure Gigaplant is having a blast with it. And I can relate. If Sylvans would just mill their cards, I'd be having a field day here. Dropping a Hermitry out of my hand for free sounds like a dream. But we're in dangerous territory here. Ask not for who the rose bell tolls, for it tolls for thee. Worst card possible. Wonder Clover is a normal spell card that has you selecting a face-up monster you control and sending a level 4 plant monster from your hand to the grave. During this turn, the selected monster can attack twice, but other monsters you control can't declare an attack. Plants do have some pretty big bruisers, but I think I'd rather go wide and attack with a bunch of monsters rather than doubling up on a single one. Plus, the fact that it has to be exactly level 4 with no wiggle room makes this far more restrictive than it already would have been. But my real question here is, out of all the monsters you could have put into this art, you chose Gyakugiri Panda. Why? I'm not upset, it's just... why? Basil Rose Shoot is a quick play spell card that special summons a Rose Dragon monster from your hand or grave in defense position. If this set card is destroyed, you can target a Black Rose Dragon, or a monster that mentions it that is banished or in your grave, and special summon it. This serves the dual purpose of either summoning your big bosses or your extenders, and that extends into its second effect. If you know anything about Akiza already, it's that Black Rose Dragon will destroy the board when Synchro summoned, but set Basil Rose beforehand, and now you can bring Black Rose back to take advantage of the now empty field. And from that position, your chances of victory will shoot right up. Frozen Rose is a quick play spell card that sends a face-up monster you control to the grave. Then you apply the following effect, depending on the type it had on the field. If it was a plant monster, during the end phase of this turn, draw 2 cards, then discard 1, and if it was a non-plant monster, you can add a level 4 or lower plant monster from your deck to your hand. So you can either cycle some cards later, or get a search immediately at a -1. Though since this can search Lonefire Blossom, it's hard to complain about a little loss in card economy. Since we already have some non-plant type monsters in our ranks, it's nice to have some level of flexibility to bridge our gaps, and as a quick play spell, is in the unique condition to help with pushing effects through interaction. I may be a broken record at this point, but it's an important trick to know. If your monster is activating an effect, and your opponent chains infinite impermanence, or some other kind of targeted negation, chain Frozen Rose in response, setting that card as cost. That way when it resolves, the targeting effect won't be targeting anything, and the effect will go to waste. And, unless it says it has to be face up on the field to activate and resolve the effect, you still get all the benefits. Heck, if your opponent is someone who isn't familiar with this, take this knowledge and show what you know in the middle of a match. I'm certain they'll be frozen in place after that little lesson. Seed of Deception is a quick play spell card that special summons a level 2 or lower plant monster from your hand. So, if you want to drop Spore, Copy Plant, or Sunseed Genus Loci from your hand without using your normal summon, this is the way to go. It even helps get Aromaseraphy out of your hand in defense position, which is kind of a big deal. And this even helps trigger the effect of your Dark Rose Fairy, if that's your fancy. But most themes nowadays have a way to mobilize play starters or use extenders that don't require you to go -1. So if anyone tells you this is worth playing, they're planting their own little seeds of deception, which is, honestly, very flavorful of them. Mark of the Rose is an equipped spell card that activates by banishing a plant monster from your grave, then targeting a face-up monster your opponent controls and equipping this card to it. You take control of the equipped monster, and once per turn during your end phase, negate this card's effect until your next standby phase. Oh goodness, that is a much cleaner templating than what it used to be. For context, as early as Fusion Enforcers, this card was being reprinted. You know, the Alistair set. And before it got new wording in the Legendary Duelist 4 set, Mark of the Rose actually had you actively swapping control of the monster every turn, so thank goodness they finally made it so the effect just shuts off at certain times. But if we're using it properly, we won't even have to worry about that because this is functionally just Snatch Steal, but legal. Take your opponent's best monsters, use them to your heart's content, then link off the equipped monster so you don't have to give it back. Simple as that. This is a positively enticing card to have in your arsenal for any plant deck, and since it's so powerful, it gets full marks from me.
Thorn of Malice is an equipped spell card that can only be equipped to a Black Rose Dragon or a plant monster. The equipped monster gains 600 attack, and if it attacks a defense position monster, it deals piercing battle damage. After damage calculation, after it attacks a monster, the attacked monster loses 600 attack and defense permanently, but an opponent's monster that battles with the equipped monster can't be destroyed by that battle. Now, that seems like a drawback, and it kind of is unless you use it to your advantage. For instance, if your opponent only has limited viable attack options, hitting it with Thorn can preserve that monster on field so you can bully it with your other monsters, which is helped by the fact that it can also debuff that monster. It may also have an on-destruction trigger that you don't want to worry about, so this covers you in that situation as well. Yeah, it's super situational, and everything I just listed probably shouldn't be your top priority, but you can't expect me to treat this card with malice. That's how it wins! Vengeance Servant is an equipped spell card, and when control of the equipped monster changes, inflict damage equal to its original attack to its new controller. This is meant to work in tandem with Mark of the Rose, giving your opponent a little present once control switches back to its original owner. And the present is pain! Now, if there ever comes a time where giving your opponent control of your giant monsters is a viable strategy, this could be a funny tech pick to dump a huge amount of damage on your opponent. For now though, it doesn't really amount to much more than a cool album cover. Also, is Command Knight doing okay? It looks like that bird is holding them hostage. Black Garden is a field spell card that, if a monster is normal or special summoned face up except by the effect of Black Garden, you have its attack, then the controller of that monster special summons a rose token to their opponent's side of the field in attack position, which is a level 2 dark plant monster with 800 attack and defense. And this attack loss remains even if this card leaves the field. You can target a monster in your grave with attack equal to the total attack of all plant monsters on the field. Destroy this card and as many plant monsters on the field as possible, then if you destroyed all of them, special summon that targeted monster. So this card reads like a novel, and trust me, its legacy is twice as complex. It's been used as a floodgate in tempo decks after establishing a board to prevent the opponent from summoning anything threatening in battle. It's been used as an FTK enabler for anything that needs your opponent to gain monsters. It's been used as a legitimate way to revive monsters whose attack is divisible by 800. It's actually a pretty nutty card. And we're going to be seeing a lot of cards down the line that give you access to this, which in no way contributed to how awful this card can potentially be. But even if it didn't have all these nasty additional applications, I'd be happy that it does a good job of guarding your life points. White Rose Cloister is a field spell card, and if your opponent controls no monsters, you can special summon a Rose Dragon or plant monster from your hand. And during your draw phase, you can declare a card type, monster, spell, or trap, and reveal the top card of your deck, and if it's the declared type, apply this effect for the rest of the turn, even if this card leaves the field. Level 7 or higher Synchro monsters you control gain 1000 attack. This kind of acts as a boot sector launch for Rose Dragons, but it's also useful in summoning your big plants since this doesn't have a level restriction. Get a big monster with Paladin, then plop it right onto the field. And because Rose Princess searches this, you actually have access to it fairly consistently. You also get a little bit of a bonus to your big Synchros if you can manage to call the top card of your deck right, and are okay with revealing that information to your opponent. Though this could be another use of Dark Rose Fairy, as it'll guarantee that you have a monster on top of your deck. Which makes sense, you know, you can't go wrong with black and white, it's a classic color combination. Blooming of the Darkest Rose is a normal trap card that special summons rose tokens in defense position to either player's field, up to the combined number of cards in the field zones and field spells in the grave. And if this card is in your grave, you can target a Black Rose Dragon or plant monster in your monster zone and banish it, and if you do, place this card on the bottom of your deck. And during the next standby phase, return that banished monster to the field. So the on-field effect can help you get the tokens you need to use Black Garden's revival effect, or just, you know, use those tokens for whatever you feel like. The grave effect is actually very useful as a way to keep your monsters safe by temporarily phasing them out in response to removal, and is actually specifically useful in terms of Black Rose Dragon itself. When it triggers its own synchro summoning effect, you can chain Blooming from the grave to get it off the field. Then it comes back during the next standby phase, so you get to keep your beautiful Flower Drake. It might be a little inconvenient that it doesn't just come back immediately after the effect resolves, but that's intentional. It's a late bloomer after all. Blossom Bombardment is a normal trap card that, when a plant monster you control destroys an opponent's monster by battle and sends it to the grave, inflict damage to your opponent equal to the destroyed monster's attack in the grave, which means this is a one-off Flame Wingman style effect, something I've given a lot of praise for in the past as part of a monster's onboard kit. Resolving that kind of effect as a -1 isn't exactly helpful. As far as blossoms go, the only bombardment of this I want to see is Ash. In my hand, of course. Half Counter is a normal trap card that can be activated during damage calculation if a monster you control is being attacked. Target that monster you control, and that target gains attack equal to half the original attack of the attacking monster until the end phase. So if your monster is at least half as big as the monster doing the attacking, Half Counter throws a big reversal, all things being equal. And even if your monster isn't that big, it'll still at least gain some attack to mitigate the damage. Seems a bit off-brand that this card is represented by Amazonesses, but on the other hand, it is a rough environment out there for women in the Yu-Gi-Oh space, so it's good to see they've all got each other's backs. In no half measure. Nature's Reflection is a normal trap card, and during the turn you activate it, any effect activated by your opponent that would inflict damage becomes an effect that inflicts damage to their life points. So, if they have any burn cards, Monolith Soft over here is going to have a thing or two to say about that. Though take heed, it doesn't reflect any other kind of life point loss, like pay or lose. Sadly, you're not able to flip this in the face of the Tax Dragon and drain your opponent out of the game. It doesn't even have the good graces to launch humanity into a new golden age of evolution. What a ripoff! Star Siphon is a normal trap card that can be activated when any number of Synchro monsters are special summoned. Target one of them, then special summon a Siphon token, which is a level 1 Dark Spellcaster monster with 0 attack and defense, and its level becomes the targeted monster's level, and the targeted monster's level becomes 1. This is an interesting way to preserve your levels across monsters, so you can Synchro climb without using a powerful monster. But without some other effect to help us out, it's really just a gimmick card that has a heavy build-around cost with little payoff. It actually does more to siphon off your playability than enhance it. Wall of Thorns is a normal trap card that activates when a plant monster you control is targeted for an attack to destroy all attack position monsters your opponent controls. Yeah, it's Plant Mirror Force, for back when they had to limit how many copies you could play. Hey, did you know that Mirror Force wouldn't be back at a full 3 copies consistently until 2014? A full 5 years after this card came out? Which is pretty unfair to Wall of Thorns, right? Like, it has its own little niche, and then Mirror Force comes out of retirement. What's it even supposed to do now? Doppelganger is a continuous trap card, and when you take damage from the effect of a monster your opponent controls, inflict the same amount of damage to your opponent. Notably, this doesn't reflect any damage from spells or traps, only monsters, and even then, only monsters they control, so I guess side this in for the Trickstar matchup? I don't know, some old cards were here just to fill space in the anime, so I've got 2 fun little pieces of trivia for you. 1, I want whatever monster is featured here, it looks really cool. 2, this card's Japanese name is Doppelganger, because there's actually already a monster named Doppelganger in the OCG, but we know it more as Green Kappa. So now you get to walk away from this video knowing about Green Kappa. Don't you just love Green Kappa? Ivy Shackles is a continuous trap card, and while on the field, all face-up monsters your opponent controls become plant monsters during your turns only. And if this face-up card you control is destroyed and sent to the grave by an opponent's card effect, you draw a card. This is an enabler for all those anti-plant effects we've covered over the course of this video. Rose Tentacles gains a bunch of attacks, and you can blast any of your opponent's monsters with Fragrant Storm. It even comes with a bit of a refund if your opponent manages to get this off the field. Really, what we need now are more anti-plant cards with a focus on getting Ivy Shackles into rotation, which would make this card a little scary, even if it's not messing up your opponent in quite the same way as Zombie World. It also means you'd have to be building around a very old card, and no one likes being shackled to the past. Least of all Yu-Gi-Oh players. Overdoom Line is a continuous trap card, and if any number of plant monsters are special summoned from the grave to your side of the field, they gain 1000 attack while this card is face up on the field, but this card is destroyed during the second end phase after activation. So it's a boost specifically for plants brought back from the grave, but it has its own time limit, and it doesn't really do anything to help get those monsters out of the grave, so why? I mean, don't get me wrong, the art goes hard on this one, but it's not even close to being over the top. Wicked Rebirth is a continuous trap card that you activate by paying 800 life points. Then you target a Synchro monster in your grave. You special summon it in attack position, but its effects are negated, also it can't declare an attack this turn. And when this card leaves the field, destroy that monster, and when that monster is destroyed, destroy this card. This attack restriction isn't too bad, just flip this on your opponent's end phase, but everything else about this card limits you to either summoning this for battle, or to be used as material for another summon, which isn't terrible in and of itself, but once again, we have better options. Call of the Haunted is at 3. No life point cost, can target any monster, does not negate effects, everyone, you can rebirth without being wicked. Why is Dark End Dragon here? Alright, that does it for the spells and traps. Now let's swing back to our monsters with the Rose Dragons. Red Rose Dragon is a level 3 Dark Dragon Tuner monster with 1000 attack and 1800 defense, and if this card is sent to the grave as Synchro material, you can special summon a Rose Dragon monster from your hand or deck, except a copy of itself. Then if it was sent for the Synchro summon of Black Rose Dragon or a plant Synchro monster, you can add a copy of Frozen Rose or Blooming of the Darkest Rose from your deck to your hand. Now, even if you haven't played or have experienced a Rose Dragon deck, you've probably had to deal with this in Dragon Link. You're not likely to get the extra search, but your deck isn't really keyed towards those cards in the first place. What it does do is get you a free monster that you can use for the rest of your plays, and it was so good at doing that, it went and got itself limited. Once again, another casualty of overtuned competitive decks, stripping innocent little anime archetypes of their best cards. It's got me seeing red. Rock's Rose Dragon is a level 3 Dark Dragon Tuner monster with 1600 attack and 1200 defense, and if this card is normal or special summoned, you can add a card that specifically lists Black Rose Dragon in its text from your deck to your hand, except a copy of this card. And while it's in your grave, if any number of face-up Rose Dragon monsters or plant Synchros you control are destroyed by battle or an opponent's card effect, you can add this card to your hand. This is one of the best targets to add off of Red Rose's summon effect, as the special summon can grab you Basil Rose Shoot, which revives Rose Dragons from your grave. And when you're looking to spam as much material onto the board for your Dragon Link plays, this is essential. But even in a Rose Dragon specific deck, being able to grab any of your support cards is huge. It's easily my favorite purpley thorny dragon, even if it isn't interplanetary. Blue Rose Dragon is a level 4 Dark Dragon monster with 1600 attack and 1200 defense, and when this card on the field is destroyed and sent to the grave, you can target a Black Rose Dragon or plant monster in your grave and special summon it. Wow, this reads almost like a fixed Lord Poison. Sure, the dragon typing is a little off, but other than that, it functions on any kind of destruction, no matter who does it, and it can even get your signature Synchro to boot. In fact, if it gets popped in the event of Black Rose Dragon doing its thing, this can just bring it right back. I don't know what it's feeling so blue about, they're great! White Rose Dragon is a level 4 Dark Dragon monster with 1200 attack and 1000 defense, and when this card is normal summoned, you can special summon a Rose Dragon monster from your hand or grave, except a copy of this card. If you control a Dragon Tuner or Plant Tuner, you can special summon this card from your hand, and if this card is sent to the grave as Synchro material, you can send a level 4 or higher plant monster from your deck to the grave. Combine this with Red Rose Dragon and you could get your hands on a plethora of value. And it's still a neat addition to Dragon Link decks, as it's just free non-tuner material if the tuner is already on the field. Oh hey Rocket Tracer, good to see you again. White Rose Dragon is the perfect extender, depending on the kind of Synchro deck you're playing, because it really helps put the pedal to the metal. Okay, I'm aware I've probably made that joke before, but I grew up on Sailor Moon R and the English dub has been ingrained in my memory on a subatomic level, so you gotta give it to me. Alright, last stop, the extra deck. And let's keep on rolling with the Rose Dragons by talking about Cross Rose Dragon, a Link 2 Dark Dragon monster with 800 attack, requiring 2 monsters with different types as material. During the main phase, as a quick effect, you can tribute this card and a plant monster to special summon a Rose Synchro monster or a plant Synchro monster from your extra deck. And this is treated as a Synchro summon. And if any number of monsters you control are destroyed by a card effect while this card is in your grave, except during the damage step, you can banish this card to special summon a Rose Dragon monster from your grave. So while you can access this with any number of monsters, you're gonna need to run this in a plant-based one to get the full effect. You can essentially quick sync for Black Rose Dragon for the surprise board wipe, and because of Cross Rose's grave effect, get it right back. And while your alternatives can only summon Rose Synchro monsters, which is a pretty limited base, we can go a little outside of it because Aromaseraphy Rosemary is a Rose Synchro monster. I'm not sure if that holds up in the OCG, but it works here. Garden Rose Maiden is a level 5 Dark Plant Synchro monster with 1600 attack and 2400 defense, requiring generic material. If this card is special summoned, you can add a Black Garden from your deck or grave to your hand, and you can banish this card from your grave, then target a Rose Dragon or Dragon Synchro monster in your grave and special summon it. This makes Rose Maiden an outstanding ladder climbing tool, grabbing you a free card on special summon, not just Synchro summon, and its grave effect is a Monster Reborn, either getting you back one of your helpful Rose Dragons, or even some of your heavy hitters. With just under 100 Dragon Synchros in the game, you can bring back an Ancient Fairy Dragon that you used as material, a Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon your opponent managed to out, or Buster Dragon to really gum up your opponent's setups. In fact, despite its plant roots, it's almost the perfect piece of support in Dragon Link. It's a match made in heaven. Garden Rose Flora is a level 5 Light Plant Synchro Tuner monster with 800 attack and 1600 defense, requiring generic material. It can target a card in the field zone and destroy it, then special summon to its controller's field a Rose token with the same stats as previous examples in attack position, but you can't special summon from the extra deck for the rest of the turn except Synchro monsters. And once per chain, during your opponent's main phase, you can, as a quick effect, immediately after this effect resolves, Synchro summon using this card you control. So it's a level 5 tuner that makes a level 2 token with a quick sinking effect. Boy, they just keep making new and fascinating ways to summon Black Rose Dragon out of nowhere, huh? But I'm certainly not complaining, though I'd almost always want to go for Ancient Fairy Dragon over this, because if I'm destroying field spells, I'd like the chance for more utility. Honestly, I feel pretty cool on this monster, and really just makes me wonder if we're going to get Garden Rose Fauna. Splendid Rose is a level 6 Wind Plant Synchro monster with 2200 attack and 2000 defense, requiring generic material. Once per turn, you can banish a plant monster from your grave, then target a face-up monster your opponent controls and have that target's attack until the end of the turn. During the battle phase, if this card attacked, you can banish a plant monster from your grave to have this card's attack until the end of the turn, and if you do, this card can make a second attack during this battle phase. This gives Splendid Rose an interesting amount of utility. You can choose to just use the first effect, having a monster's attack to run over it, and at 2200 attack, the target's gonna have to be pretty beefy to avoid getting destroyed. Or if your opponent has two monsters that Rose could otherwise defeat in battle, you can have one, then when it comes to gaining the second attack, this monster will still have more attack than the one you already have. It's a strange take on double attacking, and while it's an interesting way to go about it, interesting doesn't necessarily mean effective. It's a huge drain on your grave, which you're either trying to revive or banish for their own effects, and this Synchro's effect just isn't useful enough to supersede them. It may look splendid, but it doesn't play splendid. Alright, now it's time for the main event. You know him, you love him, the original board-breaking extra deck monster, Black Rose Dragon. It's a level 7 Fire Dragon Synchro monster with 2400 attack and 1800 defense, requiring generic material. When this card is Synchro summoned, you can destroy all cards on the field. And once per turn, you can banish a plant monster from your grave, then target a defense position monster your opponent controls, change that target to face-up attack position, and if you do, its attack becomes 0 until the end of this turn. So most people will know Black Rose Dragon for its board wipe effect. Any deck that can access level 7 Synchros can make the board a clean slate, but an oft-overlooked effect is its ability to force damage through. If your opponent tries to hide behind a defense position monster, you can banish a plant out of your grave and basically make it a direct attack. So remembering that you had this extra little tool in your toolbox could easily determine how successful you were in competitions. Though, as we've gotten more tools to summon Black Rose back, the choice between popping and keeping isn't as important. Black Rose Dragon has had a huge impact on card design ever since its release, with monsters like Evil Swarm Exciton Knight and Zeus drawing huge inspiration from the groundwork this card laid out so many years ago. If there was any card worthy of iconic status, it's this one. Not just for its part in the game's history, but also because it has the best design out of all designer dragons. Don't worry about making a comment for this one, it's objectively true. Black Rose Moonlight Dragon is a level 7 light dragon monster with 2400 attack and 1800 defense, requiring generic material. If this card is special summoned, or any number of level 5 or higher monsters are special summoned to your opponent's side of the field, target a special summoned monster your opponent controls and return that target to the hand. So where the anime version focuses on resetting the field, the manga version is a bit more precise while being both proactive and reactive. It thankfully triggers on its own special summon, and also of our opponent's special summoning of big monsters.
making this a very powerful option in certain matchups, especially Fusion and Synchro ones. The idea of bouncing a Fusion Lubellion to the extra deck before it can be fused away is hilarious, but don't think I didn't notice that light attribute there. What are you, moonlighting as some kind of dual dragon? Ruddy Rose Dragon is a level 10 Fire Dragon Synchro monster with 3200 attack and 2400 defense, requiring generic material. If this card is Synchro summoned, you can banish all cards from all graves. Then if this card was Synchro summoned using Black Rose Dragon or a plant Synchro monster as material, you can destroy all other cards on the field. And when your opponent activates a card or effect that would destroy any number of cards on the field as a quick effect, you can tribute this card, negate the activation, then you can special summon a Black Rose Dragon from your extra deck or grave. This is the latest and greatest version of Black Rose Dragon, which seems kinda sad now that I think about it. Stardust and Red Dragon Archfiend have like 10 forms each. You couldn't spare a bit more for Rose Dragon? I digress. Ruddy Rose Dragon actually fills an interesting role in the game. While banishing cards out of the grave is supremely useful and or powerful, very rarely do we get cards that just vent the graveyard all at once. But now, if your deck can make level 10 Synchros, you have that kind of effect on demand, with an extra board wipe should you use the correct cards. Heck, you even get to keep Ruddy this time. Also, cute little thing about this card, its last effect is kind of like Stardust Dragon, tributing itself to keep your cards safe in the face of destruction, bringing to mind the connection between Yusei and Akiza, which I rather like. Whether or not you ship the two signers, it's undeniable that Yusei and his friends were a big part in Akiza's journey to reclaiming her agency. Whether it be parents unable to guide a child going through a strange and difficult journey, to manipulators looking to use her power for their own devious plots, Akiza had the strength to change, but lacked the direction to do so, the encouragement, the family. And sometimes, all of that can come from a guy with spiky hair, a British snob, a couple of twins, and a guy named after a bird. A pretty unlikely place, but maybe, just maybe, in our own lives, that kind of compassion can come from just as strange a place. So no matter who you are, remember to keep that compassion in hand, because someone might need it. And if you find yourself in need of that kind of help, but you feel you can't or shouldn't accept it, whether or not you feel like you've done some horrible action that doesn't deserve it, or you just shouldn't be wasting people's time, remember that you do deserve to improve. You deserve to be happy, and you deserve to forgive yourself. Let the Witch of the Black Rose guide you to a brighter tomorrow. For though the path may be lined with thorns, life's brambles give way to beautiful gardens, ones that we can walk through and enjoy together. Everyone, thank you all so much for helping me get so far in this journey. We've come a long way since the first huge milestone video at 5K, which was so huge to me at the time that we made Heroes Explained, for goodness sakes, and now we're 10 times past that, and that's all thanks to all of you. I hope these special episodes go some way to showing how much I appreciate you all for believing in me and helping me to reach these heights, and I can't wait to go even further. Buckle in, folks, because our next stop is 75K, where we'll be talking about our last signer, Crow Hogan, and his boisterous birds and damage step devils, Blackwings. We've also got some special goals along the way to do some bonus videos. Make sure you check the pinned comment for details, because I want to reach this goal by the end of the year, and I'm going to need all the help I can get. Once again, thank you all so much for sticking with me. From the most dedicated fan who shows up for all the streams, to those who stop by and chuckle at my silly jokes every once in a while, you all mean the world to me. I couldn't be happier, and I can't wait to see where we go from here. Today's episode was brought to you in part by Dragon Shield. When you want to protect your cards with the power of dragon scales, get some sweet lore for them, and support the channel, check out my link in the description to get started. This episode was also brought to you by my lovely patrons, including this month's illustrious Quasar Commander Green Knight, Nebula Navigator's 3rd Dynasty, Ada Basilisk, Adam Zajdel, Andrew Newman, Avi Chali, Kane Senpai, Cameron Berg, Chibi Gohan, Colin Todd, Danny Bound, Eric, Frankie, Genesis Yu-Gi-Oh, Gloomba331, Great Big Pillock, Hair Bear, Harry the Ominous Benefactor, Howling Zangetsu, Iskander711, Jester Designs, John Manji, Jordan, Julius Sneezer, Mana Charge, Marluxia Zagirl, Nathan Vig, Panther J, Rebel King Lucifer, RJ the Jank Monarch, Ruxith Sarani, Sammy Haim, Sir Knight JCB, Sophie, apparently, the Fresh Prince of Conair, the Charizard Flame, The Wizard Moose and Xander Wolfensberger, Cosmic Crusaders Ariel Kersey, Bear Sharktopus Studios, Beluga Masta, Chaz Ghost, Chips Cooney, Chris Kessler, Corbinisms, Drachenwald, Emony, Eva Padilla, Give Cruel the Belt, you dumb bastards, Herbal D, Inblink, Kale the Dragon, Carp, King Scarlet Yu-Gi-Oh!, Lord Whoop-de-Doo, Manga Pages, Marion James E. Picata, Matt Simmons, Michael Shimabukuro, Nitromo, Shizuka Nijimura, Shooting Star 3300, Star-Lord 777, Stephen Williamson, The Legendary Raven, Tucker Ordorn, and Zaldreka, as well as the wonderful Starlight Explorers you see on screen now. If you'd like to help me in my journey to cover all of Yu-Gi-Oh's archetypes, get your custom cards reviewed by me, and be a part of these credits, make sure you check out the link to my Patreon down below, as well as clicking the join button for my YouTube membership. And if you'd like to see another very special video, check out the first of the Signer episodes with Yusei Explained. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.